So welcome everyone. It is so exciting to be here. I see a lot of new folks, and that's really great that we have students who have joined us, because ultimately the goal of the goal of tonight's panel discussion, one is to be super informal and for it to be useful. I think ultimately to really, highlight what is the Ontario Internship Program. And so we'll be chatting with Sharon, Theo, and Russell in just a moment. Just want to give a bit of context, from lived experiences of folks who have been in the program recently or have recently graduated from the program, and then to hold space for questions and really ultimately highlight one of the ways that government is trying to attract new talent, fresh graduates into the civil service, and what specifically is this INIT, so information and information technology stream that is recruiting different kinds of skills and ways of working into the civil service. So I want to just take a really quick moment to give Sharon, Theo, and Russell an opportunity just to say hi. I'll give a bit of context to the program, and then we have some questions that we've catered for each of them. So let's just go Sharon, Theo, and then Russell. Quick hello from each of you.
Hi, I'm Sharon. I'm currently a senior UX designer with the Ontario Digital Service. I did the OIP program after graduating with a Master of Information and User Experience and Information Systems Design. And my previous career iteration was as a teacher, English, ESL, and history. So a bit of a pivot into the digital tech space. I got into the OIP after learning about it from a failed interview for a government co-op position, and I was offered feedback for my interview, which is amazing. So I took that up, and I was told about the Ontario Internship Program. So I just stored that away. Yeah.
Everybody, I'm Theo, UX design intern with the Ontario Digital Service. Started the program in September. Went by really fast so far. Graduated recently from U of T with a degree in poli-sci. So I've also made a little bit of a pivot. And if I'm honest, applying to the OIP was part of my broader pivot into UX. But I was definitely eyeballing, trying to get a foot into government. So the OIP is definitely one of the best ways of doing that for a young person. And I'll pass it on to Russell.
Hi, I'm Russell. I had an undergrad in political science, similar to Theo, but after working in government for about a year and getting some experience with digital government, I pivoted towards user experience and product management and got a master's degree in user experience from U of T, and applied for the OIP program because it seemed like a really good place to get back in and also have that pivot.
Awesome. And I'm Skydra, and I also did go through the OIP program as a communications intern, and I've since graduated from the program 2 years ago, and I work as a senior advisor in the Ontario Digital Service along with Sharon and Theo. So with that, I did just want to quickly share for folks who are unaware of the Ontario Internship Program, or maybe you're thinking of applying, or maybe you've never heard of it and this is your first time, or you're just curious, or you're joining us from another government or jurisdiction. You're like, how is Ontario, recruiting talent in different ways? And ultimately, the OIP Ontario Internship Program is a one-year development opportunity giving recent grads an opportunity to shape public services and really help on the front lines of serving Ontarians. I think what's also sometimes a little bit misleading about the program is that it's called an internship, and I personally think it's more of a postgraduate sort of like master's program, because it's fully salaried. At this point where you're graduated from programs, and you're given a lot of responsibility from the get-go. So I would just sort of look past the term intern and really think of it as a really thoughtful and really well thought out development opportunity that is paid. I think another misconception about the program is that hold on. Actually, before sharing a misconception, I wanted to just do a quick note on eligibility, and just to say that there is no age limit to apply to the program. So I think there's often, that's what it is, and often a misconception that you have to be young to apply to the program, but that's not true. If you went back to school, if you did a postgraduate program, if you did a postgraduate certificate, and you want to do a career shift, as Theo had mentioned, or if you're looking to go into the public service, this program is for you. I've actually had a lot of friends that were in their 40s, their 50s in the program. So I put that idea into this group's like for consideration. But in terms of like requirements, it is typically it's for graduates who graduate within 2 years. And there's more information on the website. You have to be legally entitled to work in Canada, and so forth. And new as of this year, you're able to apply to the program within 5 years of graduation if you identify as self-identify as Black, or as being an individual of African ancestry, or has been racialized as Black, regardless of your cultural identity or where you were born, which I think is really important to highlight for this group. If you're a bilingual French-English applicant, if you identify as an Indigenous applicant, or if you identify as an applicant with disabilities. So I just really encourage you to look at some of those eligibility requirements that have been extended for certain groups. But as far as tonight's discussion, we really wanted to highlight the information technology stream. There's 7 different areas that the OIP program recruits for. And as I mentioned, I joined the civil service through the communications track, but all 3 of our attendees tonight went through the INIT stream. And as far as just giving a bit of context to the stream in particular, the way that the OIP recruits talent for this stream is in 4 ways. So digital, as defined as transforming the way government services are delivered online. Application development, so developing and supporting applications. Business analysis, so defining business problems and proposing potential technology solutions. And business intelligence and data analytics, so using data to create insights and inform decision making. There's also a blog on the Ontario Digital blog. It was published 5 years ago from the former Chief Talent Officer at the time, explaining the introduction of this new track, the motivation for it, and why it's so important to really be thinking about digital in the public service through this talent pipeline. So without further ado, let's get to talk with folks that are actually part of this program. And we are trying to tell a story tonight, all 4 of us. So we're going to start by asking Theo why he applied to the program, and then we're going to pivot into asking Sharon what are some of the day-to-day experiences, and then we want to end up with Russell thinking about his future in the public service moving forward, and finally want to give each of our panelists an opportunity to close off. So with that, Theo, why did you apply to the OIP program? Tell us more about where you were.
Yeah, sure. So back then, I think the OIP sort of suited a combination of my needs. One definitely is I was heavily considering trying out a position in government, and the OIP was a highly recommended way of doing that during some of my networking sessions. And as I mentioned earlier, I sort of was making somewhat of an informal transition into UX. So I hadn't, just for context, I have no formal UX education. And one thing that the OIP sort of matched up with is one way that I sort of compensated for that in my previous experience was sort of trying to find myself in positions in previous jobs to do sort of, not to dumb it down, but like sort of pseudo UX work. You know, I was desperate for experience, and one of those experiences had been a previous summer internship with the government. So I think it was helpful to leverage not only that government experience, but also the fact that I had, you know, made efforts to put myself in a position on that team to do UX activities when they didn't have a dedicated UX expert. And then also it was a good way of bringing together a lot of the freelance experience that I was gathering up beforehand. Again, lacking a formal education, I was trying to get experience elsewhere. So part of that was leveraging my network and, to be honest, some very personal contacts to get in with some small businesses and, you know, help them redesign websites and applications and that sort of thing. So I had this sort of body of work, and with, I think, the structure and timelines and deadlines for the OIP interview process, it really helped sort of like force me to bring that all together into a portfolio finally, because beforehand it was all, I had the experience and the know-how and the confidence to apply to the program, but at the end of the day, it's all in your head, and I didn't have a method of showing it to anybody. So the interview process, which lasts a fair while, I think it was about 4 months for me, maybe longer, comes in stages. And again, it provided the structure to bring it all together and show my work. And I did actually make some notes, but let me double check. I covered everything. Yeah, I think that's everything. I mean, there's some things that'll probably come up in the question session.
Love that. That's fantastic. So Sharon, what's has your day-to-day been like in the OIP? Talk to us a little bit about that.
Okay, so I guess the thing with the OIP program is like you are hired centrally through the program, but you're essentially part of wherever, like whatever unit you're placed in, and the OIP is kind of more like a career resource. So for me, I was assigned to be part of the user research lab in the Ontario Digital Service. And it functions a bit like an in-house UX consultancy for other teams in the OPS. So from the start, I was given a lot of autonomy, but also mentorship. And like as soon as I started on the first day, I like was assigned my own project that I could shape and work on. And my first few months, I worked on pretty time-bound projects that lasted around 4 to 8 weeks. And I mostly did user research, planning, making it happen, facilitating interviews and reporting. But it was for different ministries and different problem spaces. And so there's some background reading to do as well. And then as time went on, I did some design as well as the research, and I got to mentor like new co-op students who were coming in. And then like hand in hand with the autonomy, something that I really appreciated was I had someone who was like truly senior with years of experience in my field who was a mentor, and I got to observe how they worked and how they would facilitate usability testing or how they approach problems in different contexts. So I feel like not all jobs like have the ability to allow for you to spend quality time shadowing and working with someone like so senior and getting to interrogate them about like why we do things certain ways. So I feel really fortunate to have had that kind of thing and like weekly check-ins and, you know, them helping me like check over my work and stuff. And yeah, so I feel like I've come across other similar folks in the OPS who are like that. So it seems like public service sphere like definitely attracts people who consider like that part of nurturing talent to be part of their work. So overall, like the work and the work style, I felt recognized the knowledge and ability that I had from my degree and my previous work experience, but also like provided the means to be supported growing professionally. And one example is like I was involved in 6 months in, my mentor and myself and a co-op student were part of a small user research team called on to help the Ministry of Health do usability testing on the provincial vaccine booking system just before launch. And it was going to be widely used. And as a co-op and intern, like we were given the important role of facilitating the interviews and the usability testing sessions and drafting recommendations. So like while there wasn't a lot of room at that point for major design changes, I could still see like our work helped improve the product that launched. So that was pretty neat to like be involved. Yeah, so like intricately in things that I could see had impact. And yeah, like besides COVID and healthcare stuff, like it was really great for me to get a taste of like so many different areas because I'm interested in everything. And so working in government has meant that I haven't had to like narrow down what industry I'm most interested in. And I experienced amazing variety, like working on like immigration stuff and like cookies and privacy and social benefits and like agriculture. So that's been cool too.
So thinking about your journey, Russell, and the things you've been doing day to day, now you're at a point where you're looking ahead and thinking about, really building a career in the civil service. How has the OIP, helped you think about digital and the civil service and sort of your next steps?
Like, first off, I want to say what Sharon said about their day-to-day and their experience, like I totally vibe with as someone who's a current OIP intern. Like that's very much what it's been like, even down to like you work in a different area where it's also kind of a digital agency within the greater OPS where you get to be really curious about a lot of things and the mentorship and all that stuff. But taking, my experience so far, the 6 months or so, I kind of break it down into like three big things that really have helped make sense of my career, this first step out of graduation. Firstly, I'd say like autonomy and flexibility, which like Sharon's already spoken to a lot. But like my placement manager gave me a lot of autonomy, or gives me a lot of autonomy, to really pursue my professional interests. I think it's aided by the fact that like just the actual structure of how this program works within government, how the funding for it works, incentivizes your placement to give you that freedom, which is really awesome. You also have you have a lot of flexibility in how you define your role. And I think for me, it was a lot of conversations with my placement managers and mentors of like, okay, what do you want? What are you interested in? What do you want to learn? Like, where, and also where can you help us basically? And you really got to like forge your own path towards what you're interested in, which is great when you're trying to kind of figure out where your career is in digital. And you also kind of what something Sharon talked about, you get to facilitate your own work. You get to take responsibility for your own work. And when you're, Green Beret early in your career, the ability to learn by doing and also like get the opportunity to fail and succeed is really, really good and really, really foundational. And like I've grown a lot in the last 6 months. Like I can just looking back at like what I was writing and stuff like that and how I thought 6 months ago is a huge difference from this. That's bringing me to my second point, which is that as like through the program formally, like how the OIP program structures your placement, you can take that experience and really refine it. And what I'm talking about is the mentoring and coaching that you get as part of being an OIP intern. I think I currently have four mentors who I meet with regularly one-on-one. We talk about different things, which is an incredible amount of support to have as an intern. So you can you get all this great experience and then you get to really reflect on it with someone who is way more experienced than you, and you can have honest communication with, and really take that experience and refine it into insights to understand your career, which is really awesome. And then the third thing I'd say is like something that the program that's given me a sense of my career is the nature of the OPS itself. Not only is this like incredibly diverse place that has a ton of different work and a ton of different areas to like, I guess, pursue different problems, but in digital specifically, it's a rapidly developing field in government, I think. And it's a space right now where there's a lot of space for innovation and having a big impact. And the digital teams are also generally the digital leaders. So you get to kind of lead this big change. And it's like a really enviable position to be in as an intern because you get to have like really awesome experience. I mean, Sharon gave a good example of like getting to work on the COVID vaccine thing. I have similar things in my work where I'm getting to actually, take part in some like really big impactful work, which is a really great space to develop your career in digital. You really get a deep understanding, like not only of what digital work is like from this experience, but also like the impact digital work can have in organizations. And you get like this really nuanced perspective on it. It's really awesome.
You've all done such a great job. And I think, just to quickly wrap up before we open it up to questions, maybe in a minute or less, if possible, from your point of view, who do you think makes for a strong OIP candidate? What ultimately are you really hoping to kind of share, for those looking to apply? And maybe we'll bring it back to Theo, Sharon, and Russell.
Yeah, I'd probably say like a combination of eagerness and adaptability. Eagerness because, as Sharon and Russell have said really well, like you're likely to have a lot of room to explore in your position. Um, and adaptability because at the end of the day, you're applying to a program and not a position. So you can suggest where you're going to be placed, but at the end of the day, you're not picking the exact job. So if you've got the eagerness to explore and you're adaptable and where you end up, I think you'll be in a really good position.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I guess to add on to that, like if you have demonstrated interest in serving the public, because government work is not always exciting. There can be red tape and approvals processes, and that can be discouraging. Things will be delayed and things like that. But if your motivation is like, how can I make this better for people, then that's something you can hold on to, no matter like where you're placed or what you're currently working on or how quickly it's moving. Yeah.
Yeah, adding on to that, I'd say not just like a passion for public service, but also like someone who's really curious. Because like Sharon says, sometimes it's mundane things. But if you're a curious person, you'll find those mundane things interesting, and you'll want to think about the nitty gritty of them, and you'll love it. Um, I'd say, kind of going back to my last, my answer for my last question. Someone who values autonomy, especially in an internship position. I think someone who has a high emotional intelligence, because a lot of government is really complicated, and you're dealing with a lot of complicated relationships that you have to negotiate. Um, I think someone who's like a conceptual thinker and a critical thinker, someone who can kind of see the big picture, because government's really complex, and there's a lot of moving pieces. And I think someone who really likes acronyms, because we absolutely love acronyms in the government. And one of the first things when I started working was literally one of the first things I did when I first started working was going to my manager and saying, do we have a book of acronyms that I can use as reference? Because, oh my gosh, there's a lot.
Well, I just want to say on behalf of everyone here, thank you, like Sharon, Theo, and Russell. I feel like you've reaffirmed my commitment to public service. But we'll also create a breakout room if folks have any specific questions about the process, or just want to hear or learn more. And maybe we have time for a few questions now, but I think this would be a good time to stop the official recording and hand it back to Chris. And thanks so much, everybody.